Old school RuneScape has evolved a ton since its inception. When we were kids, we were more than happy to point, click, collect loot, and repeat. One of my favorite memories was getting off school as a kid, going to the north of Varrock and just fire striking people with a gang of other free-to-play mages, and then you get super tilted when they have the audacity to use the Protect from Magic prayer. Listen, I'm a very strong proponent of the idea that you can play this game however you want to play it. As long as you're having fun, you're winning in my book. On the flip side of this, the reality is that if you're still playing like it's actually 2007, most modern content is just going to be outside of your reach. So what really changed? Was it us or was it the game? I think it's a little bit of both. First the chicken, then the egg. We're obviously the chicken. We all became competent to the level where even the hardest bosses in the game at the time became boring. Then in January 2015, Zulrah came to the scene. Zulrah was the hardest boss in RuneScape by a country mile. Nothing before required you to move to specific locations, or really move at all. Change your prayers, change your gear, protect from a new venom mechanic, deal with snakelings, all at the same time. I know it's kind of a trope at this point, but Zulrah really did change everything. Zulrah would be the thing that paves the way for all that was possible for future content. Nothing was off limits. Point and click is officially dead. But this video isn't about history, it's about self-improvement, so how do we get better at old school RuneScape? Looking from the outside in, or when you're just starting, the game might seem really simple, but if you are on the newer side, there's probably a ton of weird things about the game that you don't really know yet. Gaining an understanding of how the game actually works is going to make it much easier for you to progress to harder and harder content. First things first, let's talk about game ticks. Every similar video that you'll ever see is going to talk about this because this is the speed or the rhythm that RuneScape is played at. It's literally the heartbeat of RuneScape. There are 100 game ticks per minute. The game is played at 100 BPM. Every single action that you do in-game takes place on a game tick. Most actions will also have a cooldown till the next action can be performed, which can be measured in game ticks. For example, let's look at eating a piece of hard food. This is any type of food that isn't like a potion or a Guthix rest or something like that. Think of like a shark or a manta ray. Assume I click to eat this food on tick 1, I will then eat this food on tick 2, and then I cannot eat again for 3 game ticks. If we just spam click this food, as you can see, it's locking us out of eating the next one for 3 game ticks. Another really important area where this matters to you is attacking and weapon speed. Let's take the Abyssal Whip. This is a 4-tick attack weapon, which means that I can attack every 4 game ticks. Attacking more often gives you more chances to do damage, so what if we combine this with the eating of the food? If I do a hit with the whip, then eat a food, I'm locked out of attacking for the entire 7 game ticks of the 4 ticks attack for the whip and the 3 ticks of the food. This is why eating while in combat is massively decreasing your DPS. While this might seem needlessly complicated now, and honestly you don't have to be a master of this, like right now in this video, it's the basic foundation of how the game works, and it really governs every single thing you do in game, from PKing to PVM, or even making potions or cutting trees. I'll give this one a rest for now, but it's going to keep on coming up over and over again. By pathing, I mean how you move your character in-game. Sure, super simple, right? You click somewhere and your character runs over there. But I promise you, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. When you click to move to a tile, RuneScape will automatically choose the shortest possible path for you every single time. When you run in game, you do 2 tiles per tick, and when you walk, you do 1 tile per tick. When you run, the tile that you pass over is never actually stepped on by your character, except for some niche outlier incidents. When you're walking in game, you can go to any of these tiles that surround your character, you can go straight, or you could go diagonal. Pathing while running is a lot more interesting because your little box here goes 2 tiles out, which means that you can go straight, you can go diagonal, and the funnest one, you can do L movements. Think about it like the knight in chess. You can go 2 tiles one direction and then 1 tile the other direction. Unlike the knight though, you can't go 1 tile here and then go 2 tiles out here because RuneScape is always going to do the longest side first. So either way, we're trying to get to this tile, it's always going to pick this path instead of this path. As I said before, the directionality of this really doesn't matter because you're skipping over that tile almost all of the time, but this is a great way to wipe your team in Sodatseg if you do it the wrong way. And you might be thinking, what's the problem? I click far off in the distance on my minimap and I move towards that thing, all things are good. But in higher level content, you are going to want to be more precise with your movements to avoid certain things, and nothing really spells this out better than the Corrupted Gaunt. Pathing is so important for this content because at the end of this, you're avoiding tornadoes, the floor is lava, and you're having to change your prayer and attack style, so it's really important to be in full control of every single movement. If I was going to give you some tips for this, I recommend not spam clicking ever. This is going to get you killed more often than not. Just be super deliberate with your clicks and try to think a little bit ahead. I know this one's a little bit difficult, but planning out what you're going to do ahead of time is a lot better than reacting in the moment. Since the whole topic of this video is self-improvement, I'm happy to announce that today's video sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, will be keeping with that theme. When I go and take a look at my analytics, I can see that you're either at that age where you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, or you might be like me with a job that pays the bills but is otherwise unfulfilling. Southern New Hampshire University is an accredited nonprofit online university that is currently offering bachelor degree programs in game programming and development. This degree program may include courses like scripting for games, interactive animation, digital game development, and digital graphic design for the web. SNHU is radically affordable. Their online tuition rates are some of the lowest in the nation. I understand most of you are probably already working as well, so SNHU's 24/7 online accessibility makes it easy to attend class when and where it's convenient for you and your schedule. You might even have previous college credits that could fast track your degree at SNHU. Listen, if you're looking for a career change and you're interested in game development, please go to snhu.edu/pattyfatty to learn how you can get started with a game programming and development degree. Wow, that sure is a lot of numbers, but what do they actually mean? First things first, defense is for nerds, and we will not be focusing on this. Just kidding, defense is important, but it's the least important of the combat stats, so we're not really going to focus on it overall. I did want to give you the basics of what these mean. You have a defense stat in each type of attack, each type of melee attack, and also mage and range. Mage is different from the others. Your magic defense actually rolls much more highly off your magic level than your actual gear bonus, but that's beside the point. The way the defense works is when you're attacked by another player or a monster, there are two different RNG rolls. The first one is a Boolean yes/no, whether it hits you or it misses, and then the second is for damage. Defense only affects that first roll, whether you get hit or not. All things else equal, the higher your defensive stat here, the less likely you are to get hit. However, a monster has a 0% chance to hit you if it's already dead, so let's talk about the offensive stats. Right up here at the top, we have the attack stats, and this is going to be purely for accuracy. Attack works the exact same way as defense, but in reverse, attack affects that first roll, and it doesn't affect damage, so it's just going to affect how accurate you are, how often you're hitting that monster after you take into effect that monster's defense and defense bonus. Melee strength, range strength, and magic damage percentage are the most important stats for increasing your damage per second. Melee and range strength determine how high you can hit. This is the single biggest impactor of how much DPS you can do to an enemy. Therefore, in your setup, you want to maximize this before anything else. There are some niche examples where you would favor accuracy depending on how much strength you can give up for it, but I can't account for every single contingency in this video. Magic damage percentage is pretty similar to the last two, but a little bit different. Each magic spell has a max hit to it, including the powered staves. They all have a max hit that's based off of your magic level. Magic damage percentage is a straight percentage modifier to that initial max hit. Just like the other two attack styles, it is way more important than accuracy, which is more important than defense. Oh, and prayer bonus makes your prayer last longer. Cool, you now have the very most basic understanding of how the game functions, how to move, and how to dress yourself. So next, I wanted to focus on your mindset moving forward. Listen, I do got to get one thing out of the way, and I know a few of you are probably going to be offended by this, but you do need to hear it. Runescape is just a video game. Realize that at any time of your journey, you can hit this little door right here and click that log out button. Sometimes, and honestly, not just sometimes, I'd say often, the best thing that you can do for yourself to actually improve at playing the game is to stop playing the game for a little bit. Just last night, I was taking some hard mode tab learners and we wiped 9 times in a row after getting to completion. So like everybody in the group can get completions, but once you just start getting tilted, you just kind of keep getting tilted. And after a certain point, you gotta just stop. Go do something else in game, or even better, maybe log off and spend some time with your friends and family. Personally, I find that I make a ton of progress with difficult tasks as I just stop doing it, sleep on it, and try it again the next day. It's just so much easier when you're not in that frustrated headspace. I know it can be pretty daunting to jump into a new piece of content, especially team-based content if you're going with random people you don't know, but to progress in this game, you're really gonna have to try new things. You are gonna die a ton, just over and over again, and that's perfectly okay because literally everybody does, myself more than anyone. And if you're worried about letting your team down while learning a new team-based activity, don't. They saw your KC when they decided to team up with you, they knew what they're getting into, that's on them. If you're looking for a good path of progression, I recommend checking out my video that I made where I ranked all of the bosses in the game from easiest to hardest. I think this would be a really good place to start. If you're looking for recommendations for things that will teach you how to get better at the game, I think the fight caves is a really good place to start. Getting your fire cape's a great rite of passage as well. And then I'd move on to Zulrah. Zulrah is probably the best boss for learning more difficult content. You have to change your prayers, location, and your attack style. No other encounter in the game is going to teach you more about pathing than the corrupted gauntlet. And then finally, it's probably a little bit further down the road for you, but learning the inferno is going to teach you all of it all at the same time. And speaking of the inferno, every time I mention it, I get people in the comments that are just super upset that I would even speak its name like it's Voldemort or something. They build it up to be this super impossible thing that shouldn't even be mentioned online. If you work your way up to it, I believe that every single person is able to get their cape. There's a ton of great guides out there like Exact's Classic Guide, and then Adicon's teaching series is fantastic. That being said, if you build up your skills to the point where you're ready for it, you watch those guides, you throw yourself into it, you learn from your mistakes, most of you should be able to get a completion. You're a lot more capable than you think you are. This last one leads perfectly into my next point, and that is don't be afraid to ask questions and learn from people who have done it before. While there's always going to be a few of those assholes out there, especially in gaming communities, most people in the old school RuneScape community are going to be really helpful. Grouping up with other players, especially other players who are good at content that you're trying to learn, is a great way to get advice and get better at group content together. I recommend joining a clan that does content that you want to do. This is going to be the very best way to learn from people who are already more experienced than you. This way you can see what they do, get tips from them, and ask them questions when you do need help. Or if this is a little bit beyond what you're looking to do, or if you're like me and you're in a social clan, you just enjoy the people that you hang out with online, you can always just find a group with people from We Do Raids. It's super easy to find a team and learn the content together. This is how I initially learned the Theater of Blood personally. I met a ton of great people along the way that I'm still friends with, and I know it can be super daunting in either of these scenarios to throw yourself into a new social circle, but it is the most fun that you can possibly have on this game. This game just feels so much better when you're having fun with friends. If you're like me, you need a little bit of structure. The combat achievements offer just that. Every boss in the game has a set of achievements that go above and beyond just completing the content. Some of these require you to do the encounter in an unconventional way. There's speed times which require you to defeat the boss under a certain time limit, and there's plenty that require you to do a certain number of kills. My personal favorite ones are either the speed times or the really goofy ones that make you do stupid stuff to get the kills, like killing them with a salamander or something. When you're getting advice from other people, try to understand the why behind what they're giving you. It's going to be a lot easier for you to internalize their advice if you actually know why you're doing something instead of just following directions. It's kind of like when you were in math class back in the day. Sure, you can memorize the times tables, but without knowing why things actually work that way, it's not going to be overly helpful for you. And another quick little tip before we move into our next section is to just switch it up sometimes. Don't just grind out the same piece of content over and over and over again. This is a great way to burn out. I did this pretty recently here, and then I didn't play for probably a month and a half, which was actually very nice. But this game has been around for like 20 years or something along those lines. There is so much content that they've been adding weekly over the course of that time. Get out there and check it out. There's some stuff that you probably have never done that you're gonna find yourself really enjoying. Listen, we've all seen those videos of those guys doing the Inferno on like a level 30 account with an adamant crossbow. Maybe your first time isn't the best time to try that. I'm not saying that you have to have max stats and max gear to start playing the game either. That's insane, but some content just isn't meant for low-level accounts, and some encounters are somewhat gear locked. The flip side of this is often also true. There's a lot of people who are holding off on doing content till they have a certain piece of gear when you could probably do it just fine before this. Let's take my favorite piece of content for example. The Theater of Blood's max gear setup is well over max cash, but the entry-level gear is just Void, a Tent Whip, a Trident, and a Blowpipe. You can start sending raids that make you more than 10 mil an hour with a 10 mil setup. And they're not even struggling through it. Go to World 416 Top Bank, you're gonna see a ton of gold farmers in Void with a Tent Whip, and they do the raid just fine. So how do you actually train your account? You have options, lots of options. My rule of thumb is to do what you enjoy, but that's ultimately not very helpful for you in a video. I'd recommend one of these options. Crabs, one of my AFK favorites. I recommend doing Ammonites. Sand crabs are for bots and weird pure accounts. Nightmare Zone, it's cringe private server ass content, but it is great experience per hour. Or my personal favorite, you could do Slayer. Slayer will be slower experience than the other two, but you do get the Slayer experience as well, and it forces you to kill a variety of different things, which is just more interesting. For prayer, I can only recommend that you do the Chaos Altar in the Wilderness. On average, it's twice as much experience per bone than the Gilded Altar. That's half price for y'all. If you dress tanky enough, you'll almost never die here, and if you do, you have to die for more than half of your bones to make it not worth doing this. Ensouled heads are insanely slow, and the Gilded Altar is twice as expensive, and it's a good deal slower because the guy who unnotes your bones in the Wilderness is much closer to the altar. For magic, I recommend bursting, and then once you get 94 magic, barraging your Slayer task. It's stupid fast, and on some tasks you can get some of your money back in drops. If you're a fan of Wilderness Slayer, ice sacks are much cheaper per cast than using runes, and it is a great way to save or even make money while training mage. For range, I recommend doing the same thing as melee, or if you have some very deep pockets, you can chin in the monkey caves after Monkey Madness 2. It's pretty expensive, but it is by far the best experience that you can get in the range skill. Well, that's pretty much everything that I could think of. What it really boils down to is learning how the game functions, not being afraid to just dive into new content, and learn from people who have done it before. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.